Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. Today, we journey over to China to find an amazing essential oil that smells so delightfully unique, but many people haven't heard it. Today, we're exploring Osmanthus. How are you today, Liz?
I'm in a very dreamy place today. The garden is overflowing for Beltane. There's so many flowers out. The flowers are in the shed. The bees are about to swarm. The garden smells like honey. And I have this incredibly dreamy oil to work with, Osmanthus. I'm looking forward to this, but don't expect much sense out of me.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk a little bit about the aroma. What it reminds me of, and I don't know if this is an Australian thing or it's gone around other places in the world as well. But when I was young and a little bit more rebellious, we used to drink this thing called peach wine cooler, which came in a cask of wine and it tasted like peaches or apricots. And when I smell osmanthus, that's exactly what it reminds me of. This beautiful little peachy apricotty flower. Does how what does the smell take you to?
Well, I don't think we had peach cooler. Um, we had Thunderbird on the street corner out of a paper bag. So I think that yours is better, but yeah, I agree. Oh, it does smell like apricots to me. It has. What do you think? I think it smells a bit like Davana. It has that kind of deep, kind of fruity sort of part to it, and I think a lot of people say kind of like sultanas. It is really lovely, and yeah, as a teenager, I was definitely more refined than you. We used to drink osmanthus tea, which was very, very tasty. And that's like a traditional Chinese tea. So, yeah, I think it's a really important medicine, important plant spiritually over in the East, but it's not really one we talk about that much in the West. And I do think it is a really beautiful, dreamy oil.
It very much is. It does have some practical uses. Probably the main reasons I would use it is one, as many floral oils, really great for skin. So it is a really nice one, especially, and I'll talk a little bit about starting the day later on. But I think it's a nice one to maybe mix a little bit with your moisturizer in the morning to start the day really nicely. It does have some properties that's renowned for hydrating the skin. Some people find that it helps with their pimples a little bit as well. Although, it wouldn't be the oil I'd reach for if a pimple popped up. I'd go for something like tea tree and something like that as well. Because of its beautiful, dreamy aroma, again, one thing I'm often on the bandwagon about is using perfumes and colognes, and they're not good for so many parts of your body. They're just a toxin. They don't have plant material in them quite often, and those phthalates and those other chemicals will just play havoc with your hormones. And your hormones are one of the ways that your body is constantly communicating with itself. So if you break up that line, it's like trying to have a phone conversation with someone with a dodgy line. So switching to things like our floral oils that we talk about on this series is a really great way for that as well. There has been some clinical research that has found that it's really great for stress. And I guess because of that dreamy, relaxing kind of aroma, really great for the nervous system, just helping you wind down in that way as well. And I think anything where there's um, maybe where sickness is causing stress, if that makes sense, or like we're like, oh, I'm sick and I don't want to be sick. I can't be sick. I've got to work tomorrow. I've got to do something tomorrow. I think osmanthus would be a really nice one to work with in that regard as well. Some people find it can be quite a little bit relaxing for muscles as well. Again, it's not going to be an oil that I'm going to go, right, that's the one I need for aches and pains, but I do see it being used in some aches and pains kind of blends as well. So those are kind of the main ways I'd use that. Me personally, I use it more spiritually and for skincare than I would for a physical ailment in any way.
So medicinally, then, it has a lot of sort of indigenous proofs around it, particularly around pain and griping stomach pain. It has an as antispasmodic effect, so I can see how that would like translate into aching muscles, for example. But they use it for stomach ache, and they also use a decoction like a tea made of the flowers, and incidentally the essential oil and the absolute are both made from flowers, um, for toothache as well, and also for skin. um, I like this. It says a decoction of the whole plant with red sugar against digestive system disorders and fever, a poultice against traumatic injuries, eaten raw or in soup as famine food. Um, a paste of the stem or bark is used for boils, carbuncles, whooping cough, and retinitis. I should say that's Manandar 2002. But the leaves are used for coughs and colds. It's expectorant. Perhaps most usefully, it's very antitussive. So that means that if you've got and you can't stop that sort of cough response, very, very helpful. And as you know, I am a cougher, and I do find it's helpful on the throat. Although I find basil more helpful, but the two actually do blend together quite nicely. Um, an extract of dried flowers showed neuroprotective, free radical scavenging antioxidant effects. But it says it's also, they use the roots for dysmenorrhea, so that's painful periods, for rheumatism, and for bruises, and they use the tea for irregular periods. So what's interesting actually is when we start to look at the spiritual aspect and the sort of historical associations, it's really, really associated with the moon. And so this idea of the irregular periods and issues with around gynecology isn't surprising. So do you know any of the stories from China about it, Adam?
Not really, and I'm hoping you might have some. But I was just going to say before you jump onto that, that I guess as we said already, it may not be the first oil that we'd think of, with the cough or period pain or different things like that. But sometimes we need a socially acceptable smelling oil. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I so do.
I, I, I'm about to
You're
fly.
you're
I'm
you're
about to fly
dissing
to Europe
valerian
next
again, aren't
week.
you?
And when you're on long flights, often you can get a little bit crampy in the belly, no matter what you do, type of thing. And oils like fennel may not be the best one to be rubbing on my belly because I don't want to smell like a licorice all sort. So I think it's one to have in the collection that, okay, well, I've got to pull my act together. I've got to calm down. I've got to deal with the different things that you've mentioned there, but I still want to smell nice. So it does have that type of benefit.
Well, also it has really good proven abilities on the um, sort of nervous system and on the emotions, which would really tie in with PMT as well. Jennifer Rind piece has done a piece, right? Oh, I can't remember which her name is. Sorry, Jennifer, if you're watching. Um, she wrote out a really interesting study done by Warren and Warren Berg in 1993, and they developed something that I don't know why we don't refer to more often. It's called the MPC, or the mood profiling concept, and it's a psychological self-reporting measure. And what they do is they test fragrances against certain mood classifications. So, four positive ones, four negative ones. The positive ones are stimulation, sensuality, happiness, relaxation. The negative ones are stress, irritation, depression, and apathy. I don't know why we're not doing this with all oils, to be honest. I think this would be really interesting to get profiles. um what they used actually weren't essential oils, they were synthetic copies of an essential oil. And why that's important is one of the oils they used was muguet, which is lily of the valley, which is impossible to have lily of the valley essential oil. It's always synthetic. But also osmanthus. And what they were able to prove was osmanthus increased stimulation and happiness, and prominently reduced apathy and depression. Now, Adam, you've never had PMT, but I'm telling you, apathy and depression are absolutely at the top of it, apart from wanting to rip any bloke's head off. But but so an oil that can really speak to that, even and remember, even if you're like inhaling it with a view to improve your mood, that is going to also work on the dysmenorrhea, on the painful periods, on the cramping. So I think that this is a really, really helpful oil to use if somebody does have really painful periods. Just from the point of view that you got, in Japan, you get days. I think it's 3 specific days per year where you don't have to go to work if you've got a period. If it's a rough period, you can just say, I'm having my period day, and they have those allocated days legally. Well, we don't have that. So we have Osmanthus instead, maybe. So yeah, really useful, I think, from that point of view. I mean, I have lots of days where I just have apathy. That's one of the main reasons that I use it, because it is such a gentle, happy oil. When I've got the what my mother always called the don't want tos, if I've got the don't want tos, then it's a great oil to use.
Yeah,
So
I'm
do you
just
want
kind of
to
scanning my mental library of all the different aromas of the essential oils, and we've kind of got the happiness of the citrus oils, but pretty much after that, kind of osmanthus is one of our most happy oils, I would say, fragrance wise. Would you agree?
Yeah,
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 it's real
yeah.
cheerful.
Well, it's kind of, even though we're not describing it as citrusy, it's got that kind of oranginess to it, which is kind of upbeat,
Yeah.
uplifting, kind of, let's kind of just go with the flow kind of feel to it. Like the citruses are so clever at, aren't they? They're just so positive, and it does have that kind of nature to it, that fruitiness.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, actually, when you look at the chemistry, there's not really that many distinguishable ones that you could say, oh, I'm expecting it to do that, because they're not really ones that you would recognize.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned before, I'm not sure if you had some stories from China.
I do.
Please
Although
share.
I printed a load off, and they haven't all printed off. But anyway, so the Hui people, HUI, are a cult of Chinese Muslims, and they hold osmanthus as their sacred plant because they believe it to be a tree on the moon. And so it says, Hui once saw a piece of brick and an old axe in a man's courtyard. He asked to buy them for 100 taels of silver. What is the use of these two things? I will not sell them until you tell me what they will be for. There are two treasures. If you stand on the brick, it will carry you aloft to the palace on the moon. And when you arrive at the moon, you must run quietly into the garden with this old axe, cut down the osmanthus tree. This tree is a rare thing. It is worth several million taels of silver. On hearing this, the man thought to himself, I can only get 100 taels of silver by selling these treasures to the Hui, but if I go to the moon it's myself and cut down the osmanthus tree, I will get several hundred times more silver. No, I will not sell these to you, not even if you pay me 1,000 taels of silver. And the Hui could not persuade the man, and with his spirits low, he left. The axe is an old one. How do I cut down the tall osmanthus tree with it? The man thought, and he took a sharp axe and went up to the moon upon a piece of brick. And he crept into the garden and began to chop at the osmanthus tree with all his might. And the axe was really very sharp, and it cut quite easily into the tree. The man pulled out his axe and was about to cut again when he discovered, to his utter surprise, that the wound in the tree was quickly healing. He made another cut, and the wound closed up again, and the man continued to cut. And after a while, the gardener heard the sound of someone chopping at the tree, and he ran in the direction of the osmanthus tree. And the poor man was caught unexpectedly by the caretaker and beaten to death under the tree. And apparently, he stays like that for eternity. Um, So that's quite an abrupt ending to a rather strange story. I also have another piece. I'm a bit annoyed because I did put down the lady's name who wrote this, and for some reason it hasn't printed off. But it's beautiful, and it's from a passage called "I Heard a Bird Singing." She says, "The void left by my parents was filled by my grandmother, under whose wings we all huddled, feeling her soft blue cotton dudging shirt, smelling the fragrance of her hair oil, and listening to her mellow voice from which folk tales, opera romances, and ghost stories trickled like a clear water creek. The heat and humidity of the summers retreated as we sat on our cool bamboo bed under the dark blue starry sky. My mother, sitting right beside our bed, waved a big palm a big palm fan back and forth to chase away ferocious mosquitoes that otherwise would have eaten us alive. And as the fan danced with a steady rhythm, it turned into a magic wand, with whose help we flew to the quiet, vast moon palace, where we'd meet the beautiful moon lady Chang-O, who offered us a jar of sweet Osmanthus wine and invited us to dance with her. And we would follow Jade Rabbit, gliding over the surface of the moon, trying to catch a floating cloud. From the moon palace, we would then fly towards the Silver River, which is the Milky Way, where we joined the weaving fairy, Vega, on one side and the buffalo boy, Altair, on the other. Isn't that beautiful? So we can
Hmm.
see we have this kind of association with the lovely dreaming of the moon, and this, and like it brings like a lyrical sense to the world. Everything feels mythological, dreamy, and magical.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So where I love to actually use it, although it is quite dreamy and would be beautiful to use at night and helping us to wind down in our skincare routine and that type of thing, where I reach for this one the most is I actually love it first thing in the morning. And let me explain why. So you know that feeling when we're the first one to get up in the morning and maybe the sun's just coming up and it's really, really quiet. And maybe you can just hear a few birds kind of tweeting. And there's this kind of feeling of like potential and opportunity and what will the new day bring? How will the universe surprise and delight me? And I think this is a really nice oil for helping us feel that and sense that. And especially if we've had a bit of a rough day or a rough night beforehand, I find this to be the oil of just a brand new day, drawing a line in the sand and going, the past is behind me. I'm going to step forward and I'm going to, like the citruses, cheer us up. I'm just going to ease in and I'm going to expect the unexpected and be delighted and surprised of what comes at me type of thing. So I think it's a really nice one for people who are, trying to keep themselves positive. You know, that I heard a great term today. We talk about brainwashing, but he was talking about washing his brain, of getting rid of all that negativity, getting rid of all the past. Whatever was yesterday is gone. We can't change it, but we can start the brand new day just as the birds do, not knowing what's going to happen, and we can start it in a nice, optimistic, and positive way. I find it really beautiful for bringing that sense of excitement, anticipation, positivity, optimism, and not letting whatever happened before drag you down. And this can help us keep on track with different things as well. And another thing that just popped into my head is that Osmanthus has been used to help people who tend to emotionally eat. So I think, when we've had a rough time, this will direct us back to that dreamical kind of state as well. So not so much the moon, but more maybe as the moon is settling down for the evening and the sun is coming up, then I think this is a really beautiful oil to use in that case as well.
I agree with that, but I kind of also think it's a bit like, when you have, I would say it invites wonder. So I always think about the moon. The sun's very predictable. You can say exactly what time it will rise, what time it will set. You can plot the arc of the day, but also the year, exactly where it will go. But there's something about the moon that will surprise you. So it will. rise in strange places, it will look very different. So the sun always looks pretty much the same, right? But
Mm.
the moon some days will be, of course, it will be like crescent or full, but sometimes it will be like, how is that so close? That super moon's enormous, or it's pink, and you have that unusual sense of wow, you know, or sometimes you might see the aurora borealis, which seems to be happening more often than it did here, which is a strange thing in its own right. But just to kind of look and go, oh my goodness, the actual awe of what's going on around you. And it feels like that to me, that you will suddenly go, wow, magic's just all around me, just how it stops you in your tracks and goes, stop thinking about normal stuff, just notice what's going on around you. I think it's a really dreamy, beautiful oil.
I think it's beautiful in this case as well because there are a lot of people that are experiencing physical pain that they're struggling to get through, but there's a lot of painful experiences that are happening on the individual level and even on a larger scale as well. And sometimes we just have to believe in magic and believe in the positivity and focus on that because what we focus on, where the mind goes, energy flows type of thing. And I think this is a nice one for if you are struggling a little bit, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you like you said, apathetic and the don't want us. I think this is perfect for that.
I remember watching, I can't remember if it was Paul McKenna or Darren Brown, but one of them did it. I think it was Darren Brown did a really good thing about how do you become lucky. And he was talking about one's mindset around luck. And he did it was like a long sort of 2 hour show, as I remember. And what he showed was that the people who were lucky were the people who considered themselves lucky, and that they were more likely to notice there was a £5 note on the floor than those who were like, I never find money, nothing never happens to me,
Yeah.
and the people that were like, well, opportunities are all around me, anything can happen at any time, they would notice the
Yes.
opportunities. They would, and those people would play the lottery and win the lottery, because the people who didn't play the lottery would not win the lottery, and it's
Yeah.
kind of that kind of mindset it really feels like it's in that bowl.
Yeah. So beautifully said. So astrologically, would you associate it with the moon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would. But also it feels it feels very like Venus dreamy to me.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that. There's a little bit of me that also kind of attributes it a little bit to maybe Mercury. I think you've got that real wondrous energy. I've got that kind of excited, anticipatory energy. I notice there's a slight difference in the way we're relating to it, and I find that playfulness of Mercury for me resonates really beautifully. What about chakras? Oh,
I
sorry, go on.
really like that. And so you clearly feel it more bubbly and more excited than I do. For me, it feels so calm, so very, very tranquil, and just
Mm.
like a big smile. It feels like I don't have that kind of bubbly feeling that you do. So that's interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. What about chakra wise? Would you attribute it to?
Crown.
Crown?
but
Okay.
also but also sacral chakra, with all of this sort of association with moon and menstruation and all of those things, that feels
Mm,
sacral to me.
Talking about the cycle, would you find this would be a good aphrodisiac oil?
It wouldn't be aphrodisiac to me, no.
Okay.
And that's not to say it's not, but there's nothing in the literature that says it, and it doesn't feel like that to me. It's more like to me, feels more like getting into a freshly changed bed and just going, oh, I've got the bed to myself.
Yeah, gotcha. Nice, Evan.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I'm kind of feeling that solar plexus energy of that kind of radiant joy again. But yeah, it is very dreamical and very playful and almost childlike kind of thing. I guess a cananga or a lang would probably be the closest flower I'd connect it to. But I think you're kind of probably a bit closer on the closer to the jasmine scale in its wondering. Would that be right?
But jasmine feels very much like adult medicine, that you wouldn't give it to a
Yeah.
child.
Agreed.
But this feels more like, you know, when you go into a bookshop and you just, well, maybe this doesn't happen to you, I don't know, because you haven't got kids. So, but one of my favorite things when I was a kid was going into looking at picture storybooks and finding the most magical storybook and just, you know, beautiful illustrations. And the whole thing was like lovely reflections and beautifully drawn. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I got you. Yep, no, that makes sense for sure. But it's definitely it's a stunning smelling oil, and I think from the floral oils, it really does stand alone. I think we all kind of know what many of the common other ones smell like that we've talked about on this show, but I think people that haven't smelled Osmanthus, it's worth grabbing one just to experience it. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's an expensive oil, but I think it's not one that you're ever going to regret and go, oh, I'm never going to use that. I think you will keep coming back to it and go, oh, it's so nice. It's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a polarizing one where I think there'd be a lot of people that don't like it.
No, it is quite sweet, but it's not like jasmine sweet. But I think everybody would go, oh, well, in a way, it's kind of honey boozy smell sometimes. I think,
Yeah.
as if it's, yeah, like a bit of a nice cognac. So if you like those kind of whiskey, kind of like fermented smells, if you like, you'll love it.
Yeah. Back to how I started this conversation, like peach wine cooler.
Wine cooler.
So that's a little bit about an amazing essential oil called Osmanthus. We'd love to know in the comment section, have you used this oil? Have you had success with this oil? Why do you love this essential oil? Because we can all learn from each other's experiences as well. And remember, as you're down there in the comment section, there's a few little buttons there like liking and sharing, and maybe there's someone else who you think may benefit from Osmanthus from something we've said today as well. So please make sure you like and share, because every time you do that, a fairy that lives in the Osmanthus tree gets a new dress to wear on the next full moon. So we'll be back next week to discover another amazing essential oil gifted to us from Mother Earth. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye bye.